Well, Parliament this week was once again dominated by the asylum seeker issue. And to discuss the ongoing debate, we're joined from Melbourne by former President of the Victorian Liberal Party, Michael Kroger. And in our Darwin studio, we have Bruce Hawker, Managing Director of Campaigns and Communications and a long-time advisor to the Labor Party. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
Bruce Hawker, for years Labor opposed offshore processing on Nauru and Manus Island. For years they said it was push factors, not pull factors, that brought the boats. How humiliating is this for Labor to suddenly adopt a policy that goes against what they've been arguing for so long?
Look, I think it has been a bit of a tough time for the government, but I suspect that they've been prepared to wear the humiliation involved in backing down in this way because the alternative was just to keep going on and on and on with this interminable problem about asylum seekers coming across our borders and, of course, risking people's lives as they did so. So I think in the short term they will obviously feel some real discomfort about it. I think in the longer term, though, it'll actually play to the government's hand because they won't have this issue to have to worry about going up into the election.
Why didn't they move to solve it earlier? The High Court rejection of the Malaysia deal was 12 months ago now.
Yeah, well, I think they were trying to get the opposition to come on board with the Malaysian affair, or the Malaysian solution, and they just couldn't get them on board. That would have solved the problem immediately, of course, if they'd been able to do that. And I think appointing this expert committee, really gave them an opportunity to say, well, look, the experts have looked at it. It's chaired by an eminent Australian. He says that we should go down this path. It's not exactly what we would have wanted. We do want to have a regional solution which includes Malaysia, but it's better than having people perish at sea, and of course it's a politically better outcome for the government going into the next election.
Michael Kroger, was there too much unnecessary gloating from the coalition this week? As Dennis Shanahan put it in The Australian today, why agree to pass legislation in the national interest to then erode the effect of the legislation in a political interest?
I don't accept that there was gloating. I just accept that what I saw in the Parliament was Liberal Party and National Party MPs reminding Gillard that these 4 years of indecision under her and Kevin Rudd have seen 600 or 700 deaths at sea, people drowned. These are people's fathers, mothers, husbands, wives, just people who have died at sea because of the utter incompetence of this government. And I think the coalition were basically wanting to remind the government that the deaths of these people were caused by a set of policies which encouraged people smugglers to ply a disgusting trade which resulted in the deaths of these people. And it's not something that the coalition wanted to let Gillard forget overnight, nor should they.
They certainly
Nor
didn't.
should they.
They certainly didn't. They had 44 coalition MPs queuing up to kick the government over amendments to the Migration Act that both sides voted for.
Should have been more.
Bruce Hawker, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's rather curious, really, that Michael would take that view because the Malaysia solution was put up in May 2011. The High Court ruled against it in, I think, August 2011. And after that, the government asked the opposition on numerous occasions to come on board and support it. If they had come on board, we know that it would have stopped the people coming to Australia. And I think something like 338 people have died since October last year as a result of not having a Malaysian solution. So I don't think anyone from any of the parties can really say, I'm blameless in this. I don't think the Liberals can. They've exploited it since 2001. I don't think Labor can. They had real problems with the policy. It was a well-intentioned policy, but it wasn't working. And certainly the Greens party can't gloat about it and can't be sanctimonious about it either because they oppose a regional solution and processing in Malaysia. So I think everybody in the country would say, thank God that this is over now, that we can get past it. It was not the most edifying period in Australian political history, and let's see if we can make sure that it's not repeated.
Michael, do the changes this week have the potential to neutralise this issue for the government?
Well, look, I think what will happen is that the boats will continue for a while, then they will slow. But basically, I think throughout Southeast Asia and into Eastern Europe, through Iran, Iraq, I mean, there's obviously a view that this Labor government is a soft touch, and it'll take some time for that to be assuaged. And, of course, you've only got a third of the Howard government's policy. So, this is going to continue to be a problem for Australia internationally for some time to come. But you asked a question about the politics of it. What Gillard is trying to do is to get this issue off the agenda, irrespective of the cost to her personally. I mean, she's outraged all of the base of the Labor Party, who quite violently oppose what she's doing. But Gillard is prepared to sell out any policy in order to have another go at being Prime Minister. So Gillard's decided, let's get this off the agenda, any other problems off the agenda, and try and start again. She's basically trying to wipe the slate clean, get some clean air, and start again on some other policies. That's what she's trying to do. But it's a very reckless government. I've followed politics closely since the 1970s. I can't think of a more reckless government than the Rudd-Gillard government, whether it's pink bats, whether it's school halls, whether it's this policy, whether it's the carbon tax coming, whether it's the ETS under Rudd going, Gillard saying get rid of that. Now she says no carbon tax. I mean, no wonder all the chief executives meeting in Canberra this week were appalled at the performance of this government. So it's a very reckless government. I even think in the dying days of the Whitlam government, this mob are far more reckless than Gough Whitlam was in his last months.
Bruce, Alan Kohler wrote a piece this week in the Business Spectator where he said Labor's chances of winning the election took a big step forward this week. He thinks the asylum seeker issue could be neutralised. He also thinks the carbon tax issue could be neutralised. And he thinks then, if that happens, the coalition has a looming problem funding what he called handouts without the taxes. Do you share Alan Kohler's view on that?
Well, I think what we're going to see is a very big focus on Tony Abbott now, particularly his costings and his commitments that he's made. I think that's going to be an area where Labor's going to look hard and try to score some very real points. We've certainly had some success, I think, as a result of the asylum seekers issue going off the boil, and I don't think it'll last much longer. I think out of sight is out of mind.
What about the carbon tax?
Electorate. And I think the carbon tax, polling has demonstrated that people don't feel as concerned about it now that the compensation package is in place. The big challenge, of course, is to take the opposition up and really start prosecuting an aggressive case against Tony Abbott and his costings, the way he's gone about being an opposition leader, and perhaps some of his record in government. The $900 million he stripped out of health funding when he was the health minister, work choices that came in when he was the minister for that portfolio when he was in the Howard government. These are the sorts of things that Labor has to get on with now if they're going to have any chance of winning the next election. Michael
Kroger, is Tony Abbott about to face more scrutiny, and if so, is he up to it?
Well, I think he's probably been the most scrutinised opposition we've had for years. I mean, this nonsense going around that he's had a free ride. He's been under pressure on the carbon tax for as long as Gillard has been. He's been under pressure to prove his case, which he's done. And internationally, chief executives around the world have agreed with him. This conference I talked about, which was held in Canberra this week, 45% of chief executives said they're less likely to invest in Australia over the coming year. Only 20% said they were more likely. And one of the principal reasons is the carbon tax. The other principal reason is the industrial relations furor. So Tony Abbott's been well scrutinised on these issues. The point that Bruce is making is, well, what about the detail of the policies? And, as we know in Australian politics, the detailed policies come within months and weeks of the election. There's nothing new there.
Well, one policy that's been out there since the last election is the Coalition's direct action policy, which is their policy to reduce carbon emissions. Do you think that's been placed under much scrutiny?
I think it's been under a hell of a lot of scrutiny. Greg Hunt's given thousands of interviews on it, and so has Tony Abbott. But, obviously in Australia today there is a slightly different view to those in Britain, for example, about climate change and the effects of climate change. I don't think Australians are as easily snowed as a lot of people overseas about the catastrophic effects which are allegedly going to happen, seas rising, houses being, sea level rising 6 metres to wash away houses on the seashore, etc., etc. I mean, the temperatures going through the roof, etc. I think there's a lot of doubt in Australia now about the extreme claims that have been made, and obviously people like Tim Flannery have created a lot of problems for the government in making these extreme claims that he has about the dams never being filled, etc. So,
Bruce, quick response from you.
I just got to say that the scientific community who I trust say that climate change is a very real problem. It's coming our way. There are Pacific Island nations which are now making plans to leave their islands and move to places like New Zealand. The problem of climate change is a huge issue for the next generation, probably not for Michael and generation, not for my generation, but it will be for the next generation. And they'll be looking at the politicians that are leading the world now and asking them, what did you do in the war, Daddy? What did you do to make this a better and safer place? Because when places like Bangladesh go underwater, then you're in real trouble.
All right, I want to move on now.
Oh, Bruce, for goodness sake.
Okay, I want to...
Well, it's about 1 foot above the ground. You know,
Okay,
well, Bruce, look, not so long ago, the United Nations said that by 2010 there'd be 50 million climate change refugees. You know how many there were? Nil.
Okay, let's move on. Well, let's talk about the High Court decision this week, which knocked back the tobacco industry's challenge to the government's plain packaging laws. Michael Kroger, was that a win for the government and a win for public health?
Probably, well, certainly yes on the first count and probably yes on the second count. You know, look, whatever your view is of smoking, there's no doubt that it causes serious health effects. I think that's established. And, you know, it certainly was a win for the government and the High Court, no doubt about that at all.
Bruce, there's no evidence it will work because it's never been tried anywhere else. Is it a good policy?
Well, it's got to start somewhere, and actually the world's looking at Australia now to see if this plain packaging approach is going to work, and I think that's why the tobacco companies are so nervous about it, why they spend so much money trying to stop it here in Australia, and while they're still going to try to stop it using the World Trade Organisation and other international treaties to stop it. They know that the pressure's on them now. The jury isn't out. It's come in and it's said, you know, cancer is causes smoking, and smoking causes cancer, and you've just got to get on with changing people's habits. Labor's done a big thing in introducing this legislation. The High Court's done the right thing in resisting the pressures from the tobacco industry to soften their stance.
Bruce, to plain packaging of another kind now, and in Darwin, Labor candidates in the Northern Territory election don't have any Labor logos on their campaign posters. You're advising Labor in the NT at the moment. Was that your idea?
No, it wasn't, but I think everybody knows the Henderson team and the way it's succeeding so well in the Northern Territory, and I think you'll see a bit more Labor signage in the coming days. But, you know, the focus here is very much on Paul Henderson. He's a big man in a big country, and people up here absolutely think that he's been getting the Territory moving.
But what's that say about
great things happening?
What's that say about the state of the Labor brand, that candidates are openly disassociating them from the name ALP or Labor on their own campaign posters?
Yeah, well, it comes and goes in plenty of campaigns. I see Labor writ big and Labor writ small. I've been following campaigns for a long time. Sometimes the Liberal Party have their name up in lights, and sometimes they have it down small. This is going to be a campaign which is built around a presidential approach. So the President of the Northern Territory right now is Paul Henderson, and we're emphasising him and the success that he's had in creating a real economic boom in the Northern Territory. It's got to be seen to be believed. It's amazing. Michael
Kroger, in your years in the Liberal Party, have you used the small font when it came to the term Liberal on campaign posters?
Yes, I've seen candidates, I've never agreed with it, but I've seen candidates front up with the invisible font, no Liberal mention at all. And I can assure you that it goes down very badly in the party, and it also goes down very badly in the electorate. As sure as anything, a political party that doesn't have their name on a poster, it means that party is on the way out. Obviously, people aren't mugs. You know, you put up a Liberal poster with a candidate without the word Liberal, well, people think, well, hello, why are they hiding it? And the same applies in the Northern Territory. As soon as you know that, these mugs are on the way out.
Michael Kroger, Bruce Hawker, thanks very much for joining us tonight.
Pleasure.